Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. My name is Cora Goldston from REL Midwest, and we'd like to welcome you to our webinar on supporting equity and social and emotional learning. Before we get into the webinar content, I wanted to share a few features of the Zoom webinar platform that may be helpful to you. So if we go to the next slide, you'll be able to see a few of the options in Zoom. So if you aren't already connected to audio, please click the Join Audio button in the Zoom toolbar. You'll have the option to either dial into the phone or listen through computer audio using your mic and speakers. Please click on the chat box to introduce yourself. You can share your name and organization. We really would love to know who's on the webinar today. Also, feel free to use this box if you have questions for the presenters throughout the webinar, or if you run into any technical issues, and we will work with you to troubleshoot. We also have live closed captions available during the webinar. So in order to see the captions, just click on the closed caption button that's in your toolbar. And now with that, I'm going to pass the webinar over to our moderator, Jaime Singer.
Thanks so much, Cora. Hi, everyone. This is Jaime Singer. I'm a Senior Technical Assistance Consultant with REL Midwest, and I wanted to introduce the three presenters who you'll be hearing from mostly today. You'll hear from me again toward the end. I will facilitate some of the Q&A at the end. So we have Jamila Conway-Turner with us today. She's a researcher with REL Midwest as well. We also have Rose Jackson-Buckley, who's the Assistant Director of Technical Assistance for the Midwest and Plains Equity Assistance Center, and Elise Belknap, who's the Early Childhood Mental Health Consultant at the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission in Illinois. I'm very excited to be joined by these three amazing presenters today, and I'm sure all of you will love hearing from them as well. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that we have three kind of buckets that we're focusing on today. Jamila will start with the research on social and emotional learning and equitable practices, and then Rose will pick up with how districts and schools can support SEL and equity, and finally Elise will talk about the Head Start practitioner experience with SEL. So we'll get three really great pieces of distinct information related to SEL and equity, and then we'll have time for some Q&A at the end. And if we go to the next slide, we will start with a question for all of you. Would you like to make these as interactive as possible with webinars? So how do you support social and emotional development for all students? You can share your thoughts in the chat box as I go through the rest of this very brief introduction before turning it over to Jamila. But just to share a little bit about that. And then I do want to say that as the presenters are talking throughout the rest of the webinar, please feel free to write questions in the chat box. You can send them to just the panelists, or you can send them to panelists and all attendees, and then I will be going through those toward the end to do some Q&A with the presenters. So for now, how do you support social and emotional development for all students? So if we go to the next slide, you can see that REL Midwest is part of a network of 10 regional educational laboratories that's funded by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences. So you can see the different RELs in this picture. And then if you go to the next slide, you can see that we work with school districts, state education agencies, and other education organizations in 7 states: Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. And we do this, if you go to the next slide, in partnership with practitioners and to conduct both applied research and technical support, training and coaching, as well as engagement activities with our partners. So our mission is really to support a more evidence-based education system. If you go to the next slide, you can see that we address a lot of the priorities of our states and our partners through research alliances that we have, as well as a networked improvement community. And this topic, the SEL and equity, a number of our partners across the region and nationally, as you can tell, as you see everyone introducing themselves in the chat, are really interested in improving SEL skills with young people. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Jamila Conway-Turner. She'll be sharing about SEL and equity, the research about SEL and equitable practices. And Jamila will introduce herself a little bit more, but I do want to say she is a researcher with REL Midwest, and she also leads our Achievement Gap Research Alliance. I will turn it over to Jamila.